Good evening. Welcome to SVN3E, Environmental Science, grade 11. We are on the second half of lesson 16 tonight. We're looking at protecting the environment at work, and in particular, we're looking at how we can reduce, reuse, recycle, recover. We're going to add one more R to our list tonight, and we're looking at how we can make our workplace environmentally friendly as well as our homes. Some of us spend a lot of time at work, some of us more in the homes, and these can also be translated into school if you're in a school situation. Alrighty, we're just going to review one more time the learning goals that we're working on tonight, that students will be able to identify and describe several recycling strategies, describe several methods of reducing waste material in the home, and identify and describe common materials that are recycled. All right, we began this work last class, and I'm just going to stop sharing the screen for a minute and go over to what I thought would be a really good topic for us to go over. And there we go. Let's double check. Everybody can see that. Yep, good. Okay. Reduce, reuse, recycle, recover in your home in Canada. So these are some of the things that for everywhere, but in particular, we're looking at Ontario. Okay. We are looking at all the ways of the 4 R's that we can reduce, reuse, recycle, and recover. Okay, those are the 4 R's now. When I was growing up, there was only 3: reduce, reuse, recycle, but now we talk about recover. So reduce is reducing consumption of items, not as using as much of something or choosing something that has less packaging, no using bulk, that type of thing. We're going to go through some examples in a minute. We had the reusing things. We're going to come up with lots of examples of those. Recovering, okay, getting, sorry, I missed one, didn't I? Recycling, sorry, I missed reduce, reuse, recycling. You know, those are things that can go into our bins. We'll talk about that. And recovering, that's taking things and getting them used in some other way, recovering the energy or the use that's in the product and being able to use that again. All right. So we're looking right now at a website that's kind of compiled some of these 4 items, and we're going to look at adding actually one more item to it here in a minute. I'm just double checking that the website's working properly and it looks good. Okay, here we go. Reduce. So this was to reduce how much you're using something. Limit single-use items. It says avoid products with excessive plastic packaging, especially individual wrapped items, and opt for those with minimal packaging. I'm not sure how many of you have opened toys, but sometimes toys have so much packaging. They have all sorts of plastics and cardboard and different things. So toys can be a way that has a lot of packaging. So the idea being, if you can, I mean, sometimes you can't get away from it, but try not to get anything that has a lot of packaging. It's very difficult though. If you buy things online, try to buy more than one. Buy multiple items so that you're not just buying a single item that's going to have a lot of packaging and that's all you get out of it. Okay, so minimal packaging, bulk shopping. Second item is use reusable bags. Avoid taking plastic bags. I don't think there are any anymore, right? Plastic bags. Everybody brings their own bags now. They're all reusable bags when you go shopping. One of the things you can do is just put them back in the cart if you forgot your bags and then you take your cart out to your car where your bags are, and then pack your groceries when you get to your car, and that way you don't have to buy more bags. It's another thing to avoid is to have a ton of reusable bags, that you're not using. So to be reusing bags, and I think most people have got that one down. Go paperless. Have bills and bank statements sent electronically instead of receiving them in the mail. And I think most people are onto this. This is quite common nowadays that people have their bills and bank statements emailed, right? And then you don't have to worry about it because that's a lot of paper. I don't know if anybody still gets bills and bank statements in the mail, but they're a lot of paper. So that's another thing that you could really reduce paper in your household is if you go with recycled. Plus, you also have a copy always, right? If you have paperless bills, paperless bank statements, you can always just go back to the email and get those. And they're easy to sign up for. There's always when let me just double check it, for example, here. Let's see. Here's a banking alert. Here's my CIBC statement is ready. And there it is there. And it says how to go get that statement so I can see. I also use online banking, which is another great way that you can just look up what any of your bills have been paid. You can pay them using online banking. You can check your bank balance. You can check transactions on your bank accounts, transactions in your credit cards. You can look at your balance on your loans, your mortgage, any of that type of stuff. You can do all that online now. There's no need to have paper coming home for any of that stuff. And you can do it anytime you want. You don't have to wait for the bill to come in, or that you can look up. I can look up my hydro bill. I can look up my cell phone bill. All of that stuff is all online, and it all can get paid online. So there's no need for paper for any of that. That's a lot of paper we can save there. And buy in bulk. We've already said that. So purchase products in bulk, cut down on packaging. If you're going to buy toilet paper, buy a big amount. Don't just buy one little package. Remember, I was saying when I bought shampoo, or it was a product for my hair. I can't remember what the product was. I think it was a leave-in conditioner of some sort. And to buy more than one bottle when I'm ordering it online. Anytime you buy anything online, if you're going online to buy a product, buy more than one, buy several, so that when the packaging comes, it's not just for one item that they're, plus shipping and all that is energy, uses up energy. And we talked earlier, we mentioned this many times, the more energy we conserve, the less energy that has to be produced. And so it's I'm just checking. Sorry, I'm trying to see what I can there we go. What other ways to buy to reduce. Okay, that's on reduce. Let's go down to reuse. Okay. Repurpose containers. Use old jars for storage or herb gardens. Okay, old jars. So they're talking about like a ragu jar. Well, we don't use ragu anymore in Canada, do we? But whatever you got in a glass jar and you've used it, rinse it out, and you could plant things in the jar. You can use, many people are doing this nowadays. You can use them for drink containers. So there's lots of different ways that you can use jars, reuse them, that type of thing. Okay. So that's another thing that you can do is to reuse old jars for storage. All right, plastic bottles. Plastic bottles can be used for many things, but one of the things I just heard the other day was to take the plastic bottle and to put it in the back of your toilet. Why, you say, would you want to do that? Because it takes up space so that when you flush your toilet, it is not flushing as much water than as if a plastic bottle is put in there. So the plastic bottle displaces, pushes out of the way some of the water. And so that when you go to flush your toilet, it's less water getting used. A lot of toilets nowadays have the special buttons. One button is for just a light flush and one's for a heavier flush. Those are really great so that you can only use a little bit of water if you need to, as opposed to always doing a big flush every time. So anyway, plastic bottles can be put in the back of your toilet. That's one thing. Mini rain barrels. So for watering plants, um, I've often seen lots of people have a barrel. They're usually plastic nowadays, big plastic barrel, and then that barrel fills with rainwater, and it has a tap on it. Sometimes it even has a little hose on it, and you can use that to water your plants, which is a great way. That's, I guess, not really repurposing though, if you're buying the rain barrel just for that specific thing. But yeah. Okay, switch to reusable alternatives. Washable cloth towels instead of paper towels. So I wouldn't even say cloth towels as much as cloths, washable cloths. So instead of using a roll of paper towel when you clean, you just get out and I have all sorts of different cloths. You can use them from old clothing. Sometimes you can just buy if you like the different types of cloth, and those can be used um, to clean your house instead of having to use a whole roll of paper towel up. Reusable razors. Razors, you have the type that just the one piece of the head can be taken off, and then you put the new sharper one on. Okay, so that's a reusable razor. Um, there's all sorts of reusable products you can use. There's they're like a scrubber. They're I can't think of the word for them. They're like almost like a cardboard, but they're used to wash with, and they're reusable, and they're again, you can use, instead of just using a paper towel, you can reuse those. They can go in the wash and you can reuse them again. Um, any of that type of thing. Any product that you're not just going to use up, throw out, that type of thing, that they're actually reusable. Share or donate. One person's garbage is another person's treasure. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but instead of throwing things right into the landfill, especially if it's used clothing, household items, things that you're not using, there are so many ways you can give those away, that they can be reused. One, in our community, there's some places around town that will use reusable, lightly used household appliances, clothing, all that kind of stuff. And sheets, blankets, pillows, any of those. Churches, my church often has garage sales. And so I can take all my things in my house that I'm no longer using, and I can give those to the church. They can sell those and make money off of it, as well as other people can reuse those items. So those are easy. There's also diabetes programs in cities that do sometimes come to town. And there's always people in need. Perhaps they've lost their home. Maybe they're because of fire, maybe because of forest fires, they've been displaced. They can always use all sorts of that type of thing. Um, Food that's not expired. all of the different churches, grocery stores, they will collect, you know, food that can be given to people that need that. All right, so that is reuse. Recycle, knowing what to recycle. So we just went through that on our last class, is looking at the different types of plastics that might be allowed to be recycled in your area, different types of cardboard, paper, that type of thing that can be recycled. Looking if glass is recyclable. If it's not, then trying to reuse it like we just went over. Be careful that you don't put anything in recycling that is dirty or damaged. Recycling needs to be clean and in good use. Okay, so you don't want to be giving anything that's garbage that has to go to a waste facility, land site that collects garbage waste products. If it is something like that, then you want to make sure that you're limiting those types of items by trying to use these other methods. Okay, the next one says curbside or drop off. Yeah, in my community here in Sioux Lookout, you can take items to the end of your driveway. There's that curbside Saturday, I believe it's called. Just gonna go look that up quickly and see if that's what it is. It's called curbside Saturday, something like that. Curbside pickup Saturday. We'll see if that comes up for Sioux Lookout. Pickup, curbside pickup Saturday. Here it is. Okay. Collection. Let's see what it says here. If there's curbside. Okay, that's pickup. That's curbside pickup. There's blue box. Okay, so that's not talking about what I'm talking about. That's garbage and recycling. Yep, it's not having. Okay, so what happens then is you just take your items out to the end. This goes under reuse. Sorry, I'm jumping back to reuse here for a second. You take your items to the end of your driveway and you just leave them there. And people will come along, and if they want them, they take them because they know that the end of the driveway is the spot where people put things that can be picked up and reused. If you have things that are still left there and did not get, and they've been sitting out now in the weather and stuff, you can take those to the landfill if you have to. Okay, it says close the loop and recycle. Purchase products made from recycled materials to support the recycling market. Sometimes it costs a little bit more for some of these recycled items. And the important thing is that we try to encourage and support anybody who's recycling products. And so this is called closing the loop, where we're trying to support items that are coming from recycled materials. It says set up convenient bins. Place recycling bins next to garbage bins, such as by the mail for junk mail, to make it easy to sort. I have a couple of spots. I have one in my laundry room. I have one out at outside, a bigger bin, and I fill my one small one with until it's full. And then that bin I take out and dump into my bigger bin. And then every second week, I roll my bigger bin to the end of the driveway. There's arrows showing what direction you want to make everything super useful and easy for the people recycling. So I take my recycling bin. You have to have a blue recycling bin that's got the recycling symbol on it. And then you take it out to the end of the driveway, and every 2 weeks they come along and pick that up for free. And I don't even have to pay for that. So it's quite nice. So you want to have all your bins ready to go for recycling. You cannot just put a bag of recycled items at the end of the driveway. You have to have them in the proper bins in my area. And I would imagine for a lot of the areas. Now there's a link to that. Yeah, that's in Toronto, so we're going to skip that. All right, recover. Compost organic waste. Right. So composting, we is to composting is a kind of reducing. And it says here on the website we're on about composting that a simple way to manage waste is to reduce the amount you generate in the first place. So compost your food waste, and a compost bin is an easy way to reduce organic waste like fruit and vegetable peelings, bread, napkins, paper towels, all that can go. Remember I mentioned you can put coffee grains, used coffee grains. You can put eggshells. All of those things are things that we can use to reduce the amount of garbage we're generating. Okay, we're going to go back to where we were here. Okay, recover, so it's organic waste. And then there's local programs. So this is the one I wanted to show everybody. Very exciting. Sioux Lookout. I'm gonna show you that. Pilot compost program and local food partnership. This is very exciting. This just came out in last year. So we're just gonna look at that. Okay, so Sucre has a curbside compost pickup program launched in April 2025, operated by Rockfront Family Farm, which converts food waste into nutrient-rich compost for local growing. It's an initiative supported by the town of Sioux Lookout, and it aligns with the town's strategic goals for community development and sustainability. Remember, we've talked a lot about that, trying to keep the ecosystems healthy for our future generations. The program reduces the amount of waste going to landfill and strengthens the local economy by supporting a local entrepreneur. So it's run by Rockfront Family Farm. Phase 1 started April 1st. Just seeing if it will. Okay, here we go. Here's phase 1. Okay, so it's a curbside compost pickup program. It opened to 50 households, and it's first come, first serve. So I did not get into that, unfortunately. Hopefully phase 2 is coming next. I'm just seeing if it's listed here. And there you'll see there's their sign there for the Rockfront Family Farm. It has weekly pickups and it's got free drop-off sites. Did not know that. So that's something I've just learned. So I'm going to sign into that and see if I cannot start collecting my compost materials and taking them here. I'm just going to go see what the link. Yeah, it's redirecting here to another spot. Let's just see what it says. Okay, so it's a one-time $25 fees due. And I actually signed up for a composter, but I'm wondering if this still is going to let us do composting. That'd be great. Okie dokie. That's good to know. And I'm going back to, that's great. So it's a local program in Sioux Lookout. That is the starting up. It's called Rockfront Family Farms. They also just put I saw on Front Street, they're having their business is starting up on Front Street now, which is really exciting. So that's good. So that's an exciting new business in our area. So you can check out and see if there's any local programs. Okay, now if we go back to the top here, I'm just going to look and see, is this, I'm just checking to see which one has the 5th R, which I thought was kind of neat. Yeah, that's not it. There was a fifth one that and now I'm not gonna be able to find it because I want to show it to you. I'll just see if it's uh reduce, reuse, recycle, and repurpose was one of them. Yeah, I don't think it's got it here. Okay, it was a fifth one that had rot. Let me just put 5 R's really quickly before we move on and see if the fifth R comes up. Okay, this one has some different ones here. We have refuse, say no to things you don't need, like single-use plastics, promotional items, or unnecessary packaging. Refusing reduces demand and prevents waste. Okay, so say no if you don't want it. I've got to learn to do that. That's actually a good one. Reduce, we've talked about. Oh, yeah, that's the other one. You know how you go somewhere and they give you free stuff? Like a job fair, something like that. They have a lot of freebies they give out. I guess the idea is there to say no to those freebies and not to take them in the first place. Okay, so that's something you could do. Reuse, we've talked about. Repurpose, find a new use for an item that would otherwise be discarded. Turning old jars into food storage containers, old fabric for rags. We've talked about that. We kind of use those under reuse, I believe. Rot and recycle is also on there. And another one is to fix. I don't know what the R word is for fix, but there's another one that lets us do, uh, I think repurpose maybe, but also to fix it. That's fixing it before you throw it out and making sure it didn't have another use that you could have used. Okay, that's it on our, we've done a lot of work on that. I'm pleased about that because I think that is a huge part of environmental science is to look at the ways to reduce our waste and our impact. Okay, we're going to go now back to the textbook. We're going to go to page 132, and now we're going to look at some procedures that we could use at home and at work that could help us protect the environment and help us with waste, being more conserving energy and energy efficient and reducing our waste. Okay, what is a procedure? A procedure is just some steps that we use to reach our goals or to get the result we want. And practices, it says procedures, practice, and some protocols. I'm at the bottom of page 132 in the textbook. Practices come from following the procedures on a regular basis. And so those lead to protocols. Protocols are plans that we follow to help us meet our challenges. Okay, so what's a possible procedure to help us protect the environment? So a waste audit is a procedure that you can do. It records the kinds and amounts of waste produced. We're going to see one on the next page in a second. It should tell us where our wastes are produced, why, and how they're produced. And then we can collect that data. So if you look at the top of page 133, maybe you're at a construction site. In that case, your waste that would be generated, we've already gone through some of these, would be wood, drywall, metals, plastics, bricks, blocks, glass, roofing materials. All of those would be typical wastes. And so what we would want to do is look at those and see how we could use the 4, 5, however many R's you want to go, 3 if you want to stick with it, making it simple, how we use those to do something with these wastes instead of just taking and putting them right in a landfill. An institutional or service type of waste from schools, hospitals, etc., maybe offices, would be paper. Paper's huge. That's a big one at those types of places. Organic waste, those are we've talked about, food waste. plastic waste and chemical waste. So those are types of things that we would want to make sure that they're being properly put into the right place, right? We don't want to just have all of those going into a landfill. Remember, we talked about things that could be recycled, reused. So paper can be recycled. Also, paper can be reused. If we use one side of the paper, we can flip it over and use the blank side of the paper, especially if you're looking at photocopier waste. Maybe something was photocopied on one side, but the other side's blank and it's got nothing on the other side that can be that's confidential or that would be no, we would mind if anybody saw. So that's a paper waste. Plastics, we want to make sure that if it is recyclable, it's going in our recycle bin and getting reused into another type of plastic. Reusing chemicals is a little tricky. Getting rid of chemicals is a little tricky. To be very careful what you're pouring down the sink. Remember, those go into a sewage treatment facility, and you want to be super careful that if something is very toxic, it could be any harmful in a sewage disposal site. You want to make sure that that is done properly. However, if it could be reused, imagine that some of those chemicals could. We also looked at how wood waste, plastic waste, even paper, sometimes organic waste can be burned, right? And the heat from those can be used to heat something like a building or a home or something. Also could be used to produce electricity. So those are another thing we can do with all those types of waste instead of just throwing them into the garbage dump. Resource extraction from forestry and mining. There's metal waste. That's if you're mining a certain chemical or a certain element, I should say, or a certain mineral, that's a better word, and you have leftovers from that, crushed rock, other metals, that those could be used. Those could be used for something else, could be repurposed if the crushed rock is, just waste product at the mine, that crushed rock could be used for driveways and construction sites and those types of things. Also, again, chemical waste, you want to be careful with what you're going to do with that. And then wood again can be used in a chipper that makes it into smaller pieces. It could be going to a place that they can use that type of wood, as long as it's not already been stained or painted or have some chemical added to it. Agriculture, farming, fishing, which we know is aquaculture, if you recall from our lessons on that. Nurseries, they don't mean for little kids, they mean nurseries for where you're growing plants. They have organic waste, okay? And remember, we talked about farms having leftover crops, the leftover material from when you've gone through and you've gone through and taken out the crop you want, like wheat. You've cut the wheat and you've sowed it, that reaped it. Sowed it is you plant it and grow it, and reap it is when you harvest it. You get the actual corn or whatever. All of those have a lot of organic waste. They have a lot of leftover plant life. And so those can be used in in a form like they could be used to produce heat. Remember the biodiesels that we talked about? That's another way. Remember that we said we could make biofuels from those. So that's cycling now. See how we're cycling as we're getting towards the end of the course. All the different components are all coming together now. And chemicals, we have be very careful, right, with the chemicals we're using and farming and other like nurseries where we're growing things and we're adding different chemicals like pesticides, right? That we want to make sure that those aren't just um, going into the soil and the water source and causing them to become toxic and non-usable, but actually maybe something we could use those for. Okay, so we want to always keep in mind when we're at work and at our homes the 4 Rs, and we want to look and see what we are producing and ways to reduce that. We've already come up with lots and lots of good examples of that. Okay, we have oh, this is telling what we do when we do the waste audit. Sorry, I forgot we were talking about the waste audit there for a minute. So employees look at what waste are produced. We're asked to find ways to reduce and to reuse, recycle. Um, we have recycle bins put conveniently out. We have somebody's job to recycle at the end of maybe every week and to collect the materials that have been put into the recycle bins. If you need to have those sorted, make sure there's signage up telling people how to sort. Make sure people know that what you can and cannot recycle. That's probably one of the more important things. And then looking at what's left after all of those and seeing what garbage is left. And even if we're now still considering it a waste, to see if it can't be used for recycling and recovering materials. So really looking at what waste we're producing and not just automatically throwing them into the dump, but actually trying to do something with them. Okay, practices and protocols. So procedures become daily practice through checks and incentives. So we want to have built into you could have it at home, but also we're talking more here about your workplace, that you don't just throw a big pile of paper in the garbage can that will then go to the landfill. So you would have a list of a daily practice that you take and reuse paper as much as possible and recycle it if possible. Okay. Um, Maybe next to where the photocopier is, you could have a recycle bin for all the paper that is double-sided, cannot be reused, and is not useful for the organization, maybe. And you would have a check for that to go through and make sure that everybody is properly recycling, reusing, and then um, repurposing if possible at your workplace. You could have, if something is possible to be used at your workplace, that people are aware of it. For instance, I'll tell you an example. I worked with a woman who sold eggs. She had chickens. And so she was constantly looking for egg cartons to be able to put eggs in to be able to sell to people. So that was a good example of a way that I would come to work and bring my egg cartons. Any egg cartons used in the school, I was at a school, we would then give to her and she would take and go home and use them to sell her eggs that her chickens were producing. So that would be a daily practice that people in the organization would know about. All right. A company might hold contests to see which department can reduce or recycle the most, use the most recycled products, and so on. That's a great idea to create an atmosphere where people are not only encouraged to follow the 4 Rs, but also rewarded when they do. I've had where we keep track of a number of photocopier sheets that you've done. Perhaps in a month, every staff member has a code that they put in, and they use that code when they want to go use the photocopier. And the people who use the least amount of photocopying are rewarded. They're given an incentive. So that's the type of thing they're talking about there. You could also have somebody keep track of how much each person is recycling, reusing, and send out. This is always nice. Have somebody in communication send out updates on who's doing what in the organization, so everybody knows that these are the things that are being done, and to be able to do that. Okay. Um, And initiatives can also result in practices that protect the environment. So getting to work in the first place, um, having, if you live somewhere that you have to drive to work, then having everybody carpool as much as possible, drive with each other. One of the schools, I think all the schools maybe do this once a year, is everybody walks to school, walks to work. They have a push on for that. So your workplace could also have that, where people actually walk to work if they're able to. However, nowadays that might be difficult for lots of people. And so to use public transportation instead of their personal vehicle. So you would ride the subway, ride the bus. Um, lots of people live in a place where it's difficult to find parking. It's not so much here where we live, but in parts of the world where it's difficult to find parking, then to have people use public transportation. We've talked about that as being a good way to reduce our carbon footprint, right? Um, Streamlined work procedures. So those are procedures at work that specifically reduce waste. So emailing rather than sending memos, that's kind of an old thing now, but back in the day, used to get a piece of paper and it had what they would nowadays email. Reports, sent through email, policy manuals, all that type of thing can all be done electronically now. You can even sign things. You don't even have to print it to sign it anymore. You can have an e-signature lots of times. All of that kind of stuff is a way to reduce the amount of paper that is being produced. Okay. Telecommuting. It's a fancy word for working from home. Due to COVID, we all realized we could do our jobs at home a lot of the time, using computers, cell phones, Zoom, which I'm using right now, or Google Meet is another way. All of these ways allow us to work from home, so we don't have to then even use energy to get to an office. We can actually just work out of our homes. And this is something that's become much more uh, we're much more able to do that. A lot of times we can use documents that we can work on and somebody else can see the document and work on it as well. So you have maybe a database at work, but it's accessible at home. So you can again get onto it on your computer at your house. And a, a lot of working with one another. We can do chats, we can do Zoom and Google Meets, all those things. We can work with each other without having to be in the same space. Sometimes we still need to be in the same space, and that's fine too. But it's nice to have the option to do these different ways. Alrighty. Um, Practices that conserve water and energy are other ways to help. We talked a little about that. Not allowing any leakages ever in your house or your workplace. If you have a leaky tap, getting it fixed right away. A leaky tap can use up a lot of water and that will cause waste. Low flow toilets, we talked about that, those ones that have the two different buttons, plus putting a plastic bottle in the toilet so that it uses less water. Low flow faucets and shower heads. There's direct, remember we talked a lot a lot about this, the demand water, hot water on demand, so that you don't have to worry about having your hot water tank full of water that you're not using. That water is produced when you need it. Okay. Fluorescent or LED lamps, right? We've talked a lot about those. CLF. Um, Light bulbs that save money and energy, and sometimes offices have a lot of lighting, so this can be a huge saving. And just updating buildings in general could be insulation, windows. We've talked a little bit about this before. All the different ways we can make our buildings more energy efficient. Looking at different methods of providing power to your office, like wind maybe, or solar energy, or geothermal energy. You could have different, especially if you're in an area where those are really useful. Tidal energy was another one. And then we could have something where we use a lot of hot water, and maybe that hot water, the waste from that, because we cannot pump hot water directly into a pond or a river or any water source, because we're going to do a lot of damage to the ecosystem, to the plants and animals living in that ecosystem. And so something we could do is recover hot water. Maybe use it in pipes to keep something warm, that type of thing. Okay, so once we start using these practices and procedures, then they become something that just are part of what we do in our daily work, or our homes, every day in our homes. And remember, if we reduce the amount of waste, we're reducing what has to be done to get rid of it. And if we reduce the amount of energy we're using, then we're reducing the need to produce the energy in the first place. Okay, we're on check your understanding question at the bottom of page 133. And there's just question 1, and it says, what is the purpose of a waste audit? So we talked a lot about the waste audit. There's lots of written on the previous page and this page, and it's only worth 1 mark. So come up with one example of what is the purpose of a waste audit. I suppose there's one general. And okay, we're going to look at the review questions. Go to the next page. Page 135 is the review questions. 5.1 is lesson 16 review questions there. And we'll start with question number 1. It's worth 2 marks. What are 2 benefits of following the 4 R's when dealing with waste? Okay, I think there's one huge benefit, but there's also a couple of there's many mentions. So any 2 that you want to pick, or 2 that you came up with yourself. I always love when you come up with your own. Question 2, what are 3 ways to reduce the amount of waste humans create? It is worth 3 marks. I want you to give me 3 ways. You can come up with your own, or you can discuss the ones that we just did here in the lesson 16. Okay, question 5. Explain the energy savings when using a recycled aluminum can compared to a brand new aluminum can. So that is worth 5 marks. There's a couple of points there. I guess you could just say, in general, when we use something recycled compared to something brand new, explain the energy savings. How are we saving energy when we do that? And you could even talk about how much we're saving energy if you want to add that. That would be another point for 2 marks. Number 6, give an example of a recyclable material and a recycled material. Okay, there was a good chart that we looked at back on page, what page? Way at the beginning here. Page 130, it talks about recyclable materials there. In this particular one, it was plastics on page 130. And then they looked at what recycled materials were then produced. Okay, so you want to give one of each of those. Those are worth that. Question number 6 is worth 2 marks. Okay, we're on question number 7. What is the energy saving when using recycled plastic rather than new plastic? Okay, so question 5 was aluminum. Question 7 is plastic. And those were all listed. We went through each of those actually and talked about what the energy saving is. So you can look that up. Okay, question 8 sometimes gives people issues. So I'm just going to go through a couple of these so that we can talk about it. If you remember, it says identifying what recycling plastic number would go with the following plastic objects. So some of these are a little more difficult because they're not mentioned specifically in the reading. And I think that's what gives people a hard time with this. So the first one is A, yogurt container. So question A on page 135, question 8, sorry, 8A on page 135. You have to look through, and it doesn't say it on here, but it did say it on the website I went to, that a yogurt container is like a margarine container, like a margarine tub. So it's number 5. Number 5 is what you would use that one for. That's it. So yogurt containers, yes, recyclable and Sioux Lookout, which allows number 5. B is a washing soap bottle. Okay, so you'd have to go over and look there. And a detergent bottle is what that would, so that would be number 2. Okay, I think the rest are, they are actually listed there. And so any problems with those, just let me know. But people were having some problems with that. Okay, the next one on our list is question number, well, in question 8 is worth 5 marks, 1 mark for each one of those. And question number 13. Describe 2 practices that can help to conserve waste and energy. All right. So waste and energy, we've talked a lot about. We talked about it not only in this last 2 nights on this lesson 16, but also back, we talked as well in lesson 14. We talked about conserving energy. However, 2 practices that conserve water and energy. Okay, so you want to make sure that you do, that's worth 2 marks, 2 practices. Okay, come up with those. All right, maybe the one practice conserves both water and energy, but give me 2 examples for 2 marks. Thank you so much for coming out and joining me tonight. Tomorrow night, we will start lesson number 17, which is our next topic. And it is going to continue on our making our workplace safe. And it is going to go into dealing with hazards in the workplace, which is always good. I really like to do that with students as they go out into the workplace, making sure if there's a hazard in your workplace that you are aware of it and you know how to properly deal with it. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you in the next class.